Hey BookTube, it's Sarah and welcome back to my channel, The Book Bag. Recently I've read a bunch of ARCs that I have received from publishers that have kind of just been like sitting on my shelves because I'm a mood reader and not great at reading things on time. But I have 4 ARCs to talk about. They're a wide range of subjects and I think there's probably an ARC for almost everyone in here. Half of them have already come out, half of them are coming out this month. We've got a lot to discuss, so let's get to it. I'm going to talk about these in order of release date. So the first book I have is Jameela Green Ruins Everything by Zarqa Nawaz. So this came out on March 8th. Obviously, I'm a little late reading it, but it's actually by the creator of a comedy series on CBC, which is a Canadian broadcast company, called Little Mosque on the Prairie. And I've not watched that show, but I've heard it's really good. So I was really interested to see what her writing was like. But this is basically like an adult satire book about our main character, Jameela Green, whose like #1 wish in the world is to get her book to the top of the New York Times best-selling list. And so she goes to the mosque and she's like, what do I gotta do so that God will get me to the top of the New York Times? And the imam goes, I don't know, probably like help people. That sounds like a good thing to do. So she sets off on this quest to help a stranger, which takes a very dark turn and ends up with her helping an intelligence agency try and take down a terrorist cell from the inside. This book I gave 4 stars on Goodreads. As you can tell by my tabs, I had a lot of fun with it. It's so funny. It's like pretty dark sense of humor too. So if you've got like that dark sense of humor, this is the satire for you. It's so ridiculous, and poor Jameela Green is just trying her best. All she wanted was for her book to do well, and suddenly she's, you know, trying to stop herself from being married off to the second in command in a terrorist group. So it's just so funny. Every single thing she does goes absolutely wrong, and she's just trying to fix everything that's happened and get back to her normal life as a writer. I would highly recommend this book. It's so funny. It's got really fun like Muslim rep in it too. It also like absolutely eviscerates American foreign policy in the Middle East. It just tears them to shreds, as is fair. So 10 out of 10. So the next book I have is Sofi and the Bone Song by Adrienne Tooley. So this just came out on April 19th, so I'm only like slightly late for this one. But this is a young adult fantasy novel with a sapphic main character. Adrienne Tooley is the author of Sweet and Bitter Magic, which I have read previously and I enjoyed, and so I was excited about this one. I think this was also one of my most anticipated books of the year, if I'm not wrong. So was Jameela Green. Basically, this one follows Sofi, whose father is a music, who are one of the 5 people of their like kingdom who are allowed to perform music as a way of strengthening bonds with the outside communities. And she has been training her whole life to replace her father, to like step into his shoes, and she does not get the job, and someone else ends up becoming like the apprentice to be the next music. The day after her father dies, and poor Sofi is stuck with this new apprentice that she has to train in her father's stead and take on this quest around the kingdom as a kind of like introduction. So I think I gave this 3 or 4 stars, like 3.5 stars on Goodreads. It was a really interesting concept. I really felt for Sofi. She was a kind of tragic main character. Everything had just gone wrong for her, and she tried so hard and put so much effort in only for all of her dreams to kind of crumble in front of her. I think the author did a really good job of kind of weaving in the ways her father had like trained her to be a music through this, because he had set aside like certain days for certain things. Like one day was for like praying, one day was for like feeling things, and kind of as you go along you start to realize that maybe her father was not as kind and as nurturing as Sofi thought he was. So I really liked the setting in this. The main character was someone you could sympathize with very easily. The one thing that didn't quite do it for me was the romance in this. It was like an enemies to lovers, and it was not particularly skillfully done, unfortunately. I found that it was really rushed. There was a lot of the enemies part. There's a lot of like why she doesn't like this other girl, and then it like flipped like a switch and all of a sudden she was in love with this girl. And I found the same problem in Sweet and Bitter Magic, which was also kind of enemies to lovers while on a quest sort of story. And I think there needs to be more of that middle ground in her romances where it's not enemies and then lovers, it's enemies to kind of like begrudging friends to lovers, or realizing that you didn't actually hate them and what you felt all along was love. But I feel like that's something that still needs work in this author's work, unfortunately. But other than that, it was still good. Like the romance, the chemistry was still nice. It was just the quick transition that really threw me for a loop. I think this is really a love letter to music in like a fantasy setting. So up next is one that hasn't come out yet. This is Zachary, Ying and the Dragon Emperor by Xiran J. Zhao. I made a video about this book where I kind of do an in-depth review about it last week, so I'll link that up top and in the description. But this is basically pitched as Chinese Percy Jackson meets Yu-Gi-Oh! And it follows Zach Ying, whose VR headset has been possessed by the first emperor of China. He recruits Zach to seal the portal between the Chinese underworld and the mortal realm to prevent like a whole bunch of ghosts from getting out and taking over the world. So I gave it 4 stars, probably closer to like 4.5 stars, but it's just a wild ride of a middle grade novel, and I can't wait for this to come out so I have more people to talk about it with because it's just so much fun. All right, so the last book I have for this video is one that comes out the last day of May, so May 31st, and that is Love Radio by Ebony LaDelle. So this is a young adult contemporary novel, and it follows Prince, who is a DJ at the local Detroit radio station, and Danny, who is a high school student as well, who wants to be a writer. So Prince has been crushing on Danny for quite a while, and he eventually sees his chance and takes it and is like, you should go out with me. And Danny is like, we're in the last year of high school. I have to focus on my studies. I want to get into university. I have other stuff going on. I don't need a man to hold me down. And she's like also a little like cynical about love. Her mom's really into rom-coms and she's like, none of that. Practical, level-headed. So she ends up giving Prince 3 dates to convince her that he's worth falling for and worth potentially sacrificing some things to stay with. I gave this one, I think, 4 stars as well on Goodreads. It was really good. I didn't really have many expectations going into it, but it's just like a really lovely love story between 2 Black teenagers. They each have like their own stuff going on. Danny was sexually assaulted at a party, and Prince's mom has multiple sclerosis, so he's kind of like the parent, the adult of his family, having to take care of his younger brother as well as his mom when she has her flare-ups. So they have external stuff going on, but this is one of those books where they don't center like racism as one of the main obstacles in the characters' stories, which is really good. And the chemistry between these 2 characters is so wonderful. It's so sweet and so romantic. Some of the dates that Prince took her on, I was just like, I felt swept off my feet. I was like, oh my god, like what an excellent love interest. And I felt also that these characters were like really mature. Not in like a bad way where you're like, can't believe these are teenagers, but that they just didn't have a lot of the teenage drama that can sometimes be overdone in YA. I felt like they handled their problems really well. They were both very self-aware of kind of the things they were going through, and so like they were able to understand about themselves how much they could give in a relationship, which I thought was really cool and something that you don't see super often regardless of the like age range or the audience for the book. I did find that the writing in like the last little bit was a little rocky. I think it needed a bit of like refining. However, the ending was really great, and like the majority of the book was just excellent. So I would highly recommend this one. Like I said, it comes out May 31st, and it's just like a really lovely, sweet love story with a lot of music in it, and it's just great. Go pick it up. You will fall in love with Danny and Prince just like I did. So these are the 4 arcs that I read recently. A couple of them were on time, which is better than normal. Normally I just read them after they've already come out, like a little weirdo. I think there's probably something for everyone in there. If you've got like humor, if you want a romance, a couple of like fantasy ones. So hopefully there's something in the selection that you're interested in reading. If there is, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to know which one intrigues you the most. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate everyone who watches and subscribes to my channel. It makes me feel like I have a little book family, and I love talking with people down in the comments. So just thank you again. It's really lovely to have all y'all here. And I hope that I will see you in the next video. Damn. Damn. It's just so silly. Strategic pepper time.